I mean, there was quite a few years in between, I guess. And also it was my second time making a record in the studio, so you sort of, maybe in between the first run and the second run in the studio, you sort of understand the resources you have at your disposal a bit more, and are able to sort of imagine some of the extra color that you can give things. And for whatever reason, I think I just wrote songs that felt like they were a more appropriate canvas for some of these touches, like percussion, which is something I've never done before. So yeah, the natural evolution, I guess. It's kind of, I guess you could call it a very loose and abstract storyboarding, but it's not very concrete. It's really just stuff that's floating around in your head. You sort of like catch an idea. You might have like notions about something that you might like to try. But I've found if I try to be too specific in the writing process, before anything has really started to gel, it doesn't seem to go well. It's kind of like forcing a shape onto this material that doesn't exist yet. So it's sort of like a divination process. I've watched some interviews with David Lynch where he sort of says a similar thing about how he has sort of followed the creative thread of stories where it sort of like begins as this dreamlike thing, and you're just sort of taking one step at a time in a direction that feels correct, and sort of like trying these things out, and maybe they work, maybe they don't, and it feels like you're trying to piece together something that already exists somewhere else, and you're just trying to remember what it is, sort of. I mean, I think if you play an acoustic guitar and you're not doing something like radically specific stylistically that would counter a folk association, then it's just sort of something that people turn to, and I have no problem with that. I think, my last record is arguably a folk record, even if there are sort of other influences happening, and it isn't, totally descriptive. I would have to imagine that this new record might hit people a little differently, even if the root of it is still an acoustic guitar. I also think over the last few years I've sort of shifted away from finger picking, which is also something that is very associated with folk music. So I'll be curious what people think.
Is there a reason for you shifting away from that?
I don't think it was fully conscious. I think that I was just trying to write certain sorts of songs, and they were probably better accessed with just a more straight-ahead strumming style.
Interesting.